Hello everyone and welcome to another random video on the internet. Exactly 1 year ago I did a video on who I thought were the strongest characters in One Punch Man and ranked them. Around 2 years ago I posted my very first One Punch Man video, talking about who I thought were the top 10 strongest characters in the series at the time. And today I am continuing this annual tradition by giving you my list for the top 20 strongest characters in the One Punch Man manga. Typically, the longer I look at the scaling for any given series, the more complicated the scaling becomes, so we'll see how my views have and haven't shifted. Before we proceed, I want to clarify a few rules for the list. Firstly, just like last time, I'll be splitting the characters up into tiers. If two characters are in the same tier, that means I think they could have a decent fight with each other and I could see arguments for either one winning. Secondly, I will only be allowing one version of a character to make it onto the list. This is to keep Garo from occupying 50% of this video. However, I will rank Sairochi and her respective components, Orochi and Psycho, separately because they do have distinct enough personalities and scaling to be considered separate characters in my opinion. Plus, it's just more fun this way and we get more fun topics. Thirdly and lastly, please remember that this video is just my thoughts and opinions. They're bound to be different from yours. Everyone's lists are varied and distinct and I cannot please everyone. So just keep that in mind. This is just meant to be a fun time, not a war zone. And without any further ado, let's jump right into the list. Starting off with a few honorable mentions just like last year, I think a good place to begin is Darkshine. In the story as a whole, he is one of the main benchmarks of power. He's kind of the exact middle point between the low tiers and the high tiers of the series. You're either stronger than Darkshine or you're fodder. Scaling directly off of this guy, the next couple honorable mentions are Vomited Fear Ugly and Carnage Kabuto because they're able to fight him or straight up defeat him in Ugly's case. Homeless Emperor scales 2 and above Ugly, so he's here. Other mentions are Hellfire and Gale for being able to damage Flashy Flash and force him to use a bit of strategy to beat them. In a similar vein, Sonic is here for being able to somewhat keep up with Flash and force him to use one of his killer moves against him. Phoenix Man is also here because he has a very broken ability, but his scaling is very weird and vague, especially after the redraw. Another honorable mention is Goketsu. I will say there are some lore implications that could get him onto the list, but personally I don't think he's that crazy. Again though, it is possible to debate a spot for him on the list and I will tell you where I would rank him if we took his full potential lore to the max when we get there on the list. Up next are Empty Void and Blast Screw. They're undoubtedly going to be broken in the future, but for now we just don't know exactly how strong they are. So it feels odd to just give them a ranking based off of how I feel about them. And the last two honorable mentions might be a bit controversial for not making the list. First up is Metal Bat. His power varies drastically depending on various factors. In base he's really not that impressive, but then for some reason he's able to keep up with Monster Garo in base seemingly. But he also might be boosted by his resonance with Garo there as well. If I were to rank full power Resonance Metal Bat at his peak, he would definitely make the list, but due to his power being so inconsistent and weird, I'll just keep him here. And the last honorable mention, just barely squeezed out of the list, is Atomic Samurai with the Sunblade. He is strong enough to cut Golden S, who is Darkshine but better, and fast enough to seemingly cut him multiple times in a single instant before Golden S can really react. However, that could just be an AoE effect of the Sunblade for all we know, and not just him physically swinging a sword multiple times before Golden S could do anything. And Golden was able to blitz in front of Atomic Samurai to protect Homeless Emperor, so yeah, I don't think Atomic is faster than him. I won't deny that Kamikaze is very strong, but scaling to Golden S, who doesn't really have much concrete scaling of his own, as I went over in a previous video, just isn't enough to quite get him high enough to reach the top 20. Plus, his stamina is extremely low. If an opponent is relative to him in speed at all, they just have to run for like 2 seconds and Atomic runs out of gas. So yeah, Kamikaze just doesn't make the cut unfortunately. Moving on to the actual list, Starting off in C tier at number 20 is Bang's brother, Bomb. Bomb has some pretty insane showings like clashing equally with Monster Shell Garo and negating his Whirlwind Fist. This Garo is unconsciously combining various martial arts into his own style and has undergone full monsterization, which should make him massively stronger than he was in his spiral form, even despite the nerf he'd get from sleeping. Plus, Bang also implies that his skill has increased thanks to monsterization as well, so he would not only be more powerful than Spiral Garo, but also more skilled, because this Monster Garo performs much better skill feats than Spiral Garo ever did. Bomb was also clearly fatigued in this battle, as he just gave a good portion of his energy away to save Tank Top Master. You can even visibly see that he looks older after this energy drain. However, I will say it's likely that Garo wasn't using the Awakening Breath during this fight, as Bomb was shocked to see him trading even blows with Bang at full power just moments after this, saying that Garo must have gotten even stronger. And then right after that, we cut to Bang explaining the Awakening Breath and how it amps you. We also see Garo start breathing heavier right as this fight starts. So yeah, I think it's likely that Garo was not using the Awakening Breath against Bomb. It has been stated by Murata in the past that Bomb is stronger than Bang, but I think that the showings they have are just not indicative of this, and the statement is likely outdated. All this basically means that Fatigued Bomb is relative or slightly inferior to a Garo who should be massively stronger than Spiral Garo, but definitely weaker than Awakening Breath Bang. Still, this is definitely enough to edge Atomic Samurai out in my opinion, as Bomb does have better speed feats and only needs to dodge until Kamikaze's tank runs dry. He could also probably beat every honorable mention one-on-one as well. The most troubling would probably be Hellfire and Gale and maybe Metal Bat, high maybe, but one-on-one he definitely should be able to take them all out. Moving on to number 19, it is Silverfang. I made a whole video hyping him up against Golden S, but to quickly summarize, Bang is able to fight Awakening Breath, Exploding Hard to Release Fist, Roaring Aura, Skyripping Fist, Combination Style, Sleeping Monster Garo, and keep pace with him as well as slightly damage him. He can take blows from Awakening Breath and Exploding Hard to Release Fist Garo, who would later go on to damage Platinum S multiple times without even utilizing the Roaring Aura Skyripping Fist, which is the thing that one-shot Bang. I go over why this version of Sleeping Garo shouldn't be much weaker than Awake Garo in detail in my Bang vs Golden S video, so if you want you can go check it out after you're done here. Bang also has extremely potent martial arts, with the Water Stream Fist allowing him to deflect any attacks that are almost a one-shot tier above his own power and durability. Bang's combat speed is also no joke, as he's keeping up with and slightly outpacing a Garo who is equal to the Garo who later kept up with suppressed Platinum S and outsped Flashy Flash. And this is all without even considering Bang's perfected Exploding Heart Release Fist, which would boost his stats greatly. All in all, Bang is a monster, and he is definitely one of the strongest heroes around. As people say, he is not ranked number 3 behind Tatsumaki for no reason. Next up at number 18, I have Overgrown Rover. How he matches up against people of Bang's caliber is an interesting topic in and of itself, but for his baseline scaling, he can tank a combination attack from Bang and Bomb while they're being amped by Fubuki. His blasts are also implied to be potent enough to at least injure Bang. However, that being said, Silverfang seems pretty confident he and his brother can actually take Rover down. However, that is when they are both amped up and when Rover is weakened from getting punched by Saitama. However, Bang never says he'll need to use the Awakening Breath or expend his life force to beat Rover, and he says they'll have to teach him to sit pretty casually, so it is possible he thinks they can do it without him needing to utilize his Awakening Breath technique. So what you get is a weakened Rover being at or below the combined efforts of base Bang and Bomb while they're amped. So is the buff on Bang and the nerf on Rover in this situation a larger boost to Bang than the Awakening Breath would be? It is impossible to say. On top of this, Rover did also do pretty poorly against Garo, with his blasts eventually just being shrugged off due to Garo's evolution to gain heat resistance. Rover also lacks any meaningful regeneration, so he has to rely on his durability to keep him alive. Still, narrative-wise, I believe Rover should scale to or slightly above Bang, and he is a bad matchup for the old man. So I feel like he does deserve this spot above him, especially since he could tank the Dragon Slayer Fist while weakened and take no damage from it. Moving on, number 17 is Flashy Flash. But wait, didn't I just say a couple minutes ago that Bang should be equal to the Garo who beat Flashy Flash? What gives? Well, if this fight happened during the Monster Association arc, even if Flashy Flash had a sword, I do believe that it would be decently close, but Bang would ultimately win. However, time has passed since then, and now Flashy Flash is much stronger and faster than he used to be. For one, in the Monster Association arc, Hellfire and Gale were able to deal damage to Flashy Flash, and he was concerned that if he killed one of them, the other could get away and cause trouble later down the line. This indicates that Flashy can't just blitz Hellfire or Gale, because if he could, then there would be no chance of them getting away. They have to be somewhat relative in speed to him if they have any chance of escaping. And the actual fight supports this. What ends up happening is Flashy Flash feigns weakness, lures them in, stuns them with flashy kicks, and then while they are stunned, he uses that opening to kill them both simultaneously with his ultimate move, the Flashy Slash. He needed a strategy to make sure they both went down. Then in this latest arc, Hellfire and Gale come back, and they state that they've been training and now they're tougher than before, and they're confident they can take Flashy Flash, even though they're in human form. These steroid ninjas then get absolutely no-diffed by Flashy Flash along with their entire squad. They even directly say Flashy Flash is tougher now too. The whole narrative is that Flashy Flash has given up at least part of his pride, and that's why he's gotten so much stronger. So with all this, even if Bang could amp himself beyond what we saw from him in the Monster Association arc, I just do not think he can measure up to Flashy Flash anymore. I still think the fight is maybe decently close, but Flash should win mid to maybe high difficulty. And for Rover, Flash would be capable of dealing at least a little bit of damage with his slashes if he was able to withstand blows from Platinum S, so Flashy would just blitz around Rover and keep cutting him until he bleeds out. Death from 1,000 cuts, as they say. Flashy Flash could also aim for Rover's eyes to blind him, and so on. I just think Rover is tough and he could definitely take a lot of punishment from Flashy Flash, but there's just nothing he can do to beat him, and eventually he would just die. Following Flashy Flash, at number 16, I've put Elder Centipede. I've gone into quite a bit of detail on Elder in my Kadri ranking video, so again, if you want an in-depth explanation for my placement, I suggest checking it out. But for a brief explanation, this monster is called a calamity and a natural disaster. Bomb, who should be aware of Bang's full power with the Awakening Breath and potentially the Exploding Heart Release Fist, thinks he and Bang working together cannot defeat Elder Centipede. Bang himself only tries the Awakening Breath when civilians are put at risk and there's absolutely no other option available, and even then he never says he's going to kill Elder, just that he's going to expend the last of his life force. This is a pretty interesting statement because we know that even after using the Awakening Breath for an extended period of time, Bang wasn't dead, and he's still in good enough shape to spar with Garo currently. So when Bang says he's going to expend his life's remaining strength against Elder Centipede, he might not just be referring to the Awakening Breath. This is just a theory, but it would make an awful lot of sense if he had been talking about the Exploding Heart Release Fist. We know it puts immense strain on the body, potentially enough to cripple Bang if he used it at his old age. Maybe. Again, this is just a theory, but it would make Elder Centipede even more impressive. Other than that, Elder Centipede was about to molt when the Roaring Aura Fist shattered his carapace, so it's questionable if Bang and Bomb could have actually done it on a fully structurally sound Elder Centipede, and Murata also implied in one of his streams that Elder Centipede got stronger after molting, and called him Evolved Elder Centipede. So it is likely that now he's even stronger than the showings we've seen from him in his base state. And finally, Elder Centipede has the obvious size and regeneration advantages over most of his foes. Against Bang, he would outlast him, Against Rover, it's most likely a stalemate as neither monster can kill each other, but Elder Centipede has a better matchup spread and a better arsenal to deal with most heroes. Against Flashy Flash, Elder would definitely be at a very severe speed disadvantage, and Flash would keep blitzing him over and over again, but with Elder's regeneration and sheer size, there is no way for Flashy to deal any lethal damage. He'd need to destroy huge sections of Elder Centipede all at once before Elder can regenerate, and with how massive Elder is, it's hard to see that happening. Bro got his insides blasted by Genos and healed within seconds. Flash would likely eventually become exhausted and vulnerable after a very long battle. Basically, what Elder Centipede has over most of his foes is his insane vitality. He is a damage sponge. If Elder Centipede was an RPG character, he would be a tank with low speed and decent damage, but super high HP, which constantly regenerates, and you also cannot get critical hits on him either. It's just really hard to put him down, what can I say? This is also where Goketsu could go if you push his lore to the potential max, as you can make the argument that Gyoro thought a few heroes could stand against Elder Centipede but then couldn't believe that Goketsu died. But again, I'm not convinced on it, I still have my problems with it. Maybe in the future, we'll see. Moving on, number 15 is Psychos. Again, I went into her scaling in my previous Cadre video, and I still stand by most of it. Gyoro can specifically sense power levels, and she thinks that she can take down Tatsumaki, who she thinks can oppose Elder Centipede. Fubuki, upon sensing Tatsumaki's fight with Gyoro, starts shaking because of how much power her sister is outputting, and thinks that her opponent must be incredibly powerful for her sister to be putting in this much effort. Psychos herself is stated to make Gyoro look like nothing in comparison, and does better against Tats than Gyoro. Psychos also technically blitzed Flashy Flash, but that was when she was accelerating at Tatsumaki, and Tatsumaki was also pulling her toward herself. So her speed was technically amped by Tatsumaki here. On top of that, you can maybe argue Flash was simply off guard. This is supported by the fact that even Saitama doesn't seem to have fully perceived Psychos, as he asks, was it human? But you could also just say that he saw her and just wasn't sure if she was a human or a monster. And besides, Saitama is always aloof, whereas Flashy is a ninja in enemy territory. I doubt he would let his guard down. Still, this feat is funky, and either way, Tatsumaki is assisting it. When it comes to how Psychos matches up against the people below her, she's definitely more powerful than all of them and could crush them. If you don't think this above Flash speed is valid for her, then I can see arguments for Bang, Bomb, and Flashy Flash blitzing her before she can activate her powers. Still, overall, I think she ranks above them pretty comfortably due to being able to take down much stronger characters than they can. It's sort of a matchup thing. And finally, getting to the end of C tier, at number 14 sits Metal Knight. Child Emperor thinks his firepower is above that of any lone hero. Gyoro thinks he can oppose Elder Centipede. The Hero Association thinks Metal Knight could become a threat to them in the future despite having Tatsumaki on their side. Of course, they only know suppressed Tatsumaki, and Child Emperor only knows massively fatigued Tatsumaki, but it's still very impressive lore for Metal Knight nevertheless. Missiles from a single Metal Knight drone were also seen bothering Elder Centipede a bit. It is likely that Metal Knight has upgraded them since they failed to destroy the meteor as well, likely with the meteor as a goalpost for what his missiles should be capable of destroying. I'm not saying each of these missiles is meteor level, but just that Metal Knight is probably working on getting them to that meteor level. Or at least it would make sense for him to be doing that. Overall, Dr. Bufoy, with his army of drones and whatever else he has at his disposal, definitely deserves this spot. He could overwhelm anyone below him with hundreds of wide range and massive scale attacks. Flashy and Bang might be able to speed blitz most of his arsenal, but with an entire army being in play, it is likely that they would eventually get hit with something and die. I doubt they could survive if Bufoy used his robots as distractions while he detonated nuclear bombs all around the battlefield surrounding Flashy or Bang. Metal Knight also probably has all sorts of weapons that we haven't seen at this point, and his lore is very impressive. He could potentially go higher than this, but for now we just don't have enough showings for that. Now moving up to B tier. This is probably the most difficult range of characters to rank, so I will list them all off and then go into their scaling. Numbers 13, 12, 11, 10, and 9 are Platinum S, Orochi, Sage Centipede, Evil Ocean Water, and 10-second Genos. Orochi vs Sage Centipede is a hot topic over in these waters, and there is so much to talk about that I almost want to make a second video on the matchup. But what it ultimately boils down to, in my opinion, is just how much exactly God knew at the time he sent Sage Centipede to attack the surface world. Sage specifically stated he was sent to destroy the fist that is turned against God, that being Saitama. Saitama beat Orochi, so Sage should be above Orochi. However, did God see the Saitama vs Orochi fight? Did God see the Boros vs Saitama fight? When exactly did God become active? There is a whole debacle to go into, and it would take way too long, but I will say this. After a conversation with Mr. Perfect Cell, go check him out, he makes awesome content, I do believe now that lore-wise, Sage Centipede and Evil Ocean Water as a duo should be a lot stronger than Orochi, and Sage individually should be stronger than Orochi as well. However, in terms of feats, Sage Centipede is... I'm just gonna say it, he is pathetic, and Orochi should beat him mid-diff at most. He has better calcs, better speed, better everything except regeneration and size in my opinion. But unlike the previous cases where Elder Centipede's regen carried him through his fights, Orochi actually has the scale to deal with huge regenerating tanks like Sage. But again, narratively it is somewhat interpretation based, with it being more likely for Sage to be stronger than Orochi is, I will admit that. Although even then, Sage and Ocean Water were sent as a duo to take on Saitama, so they really only scale above Orochi together. Saitama did one-shot Orochi, so if God saw that fight, that implies that in God's eyes, Sage and Water have to be able to deal with the guy who one-shot Orochi. This would imply they have far greater durability and attack potency than the Monster King. However, when you really look at it, both of these guys specifically have busted vitality and regeneration. It is possible that Sage was just meant to be a punching bag who got brutally wounded with every blow, but just was able to regen the damage and serve as a good distraction for Ocean Water to potentially deal damage to Saitama with the oceanic cannons or something like that. Again, a lot depends exactly on how much God knows and what he intended, and what your interpretation is, what headcanons you go with, like, it depends on all of these factors which we just don't have the answers to. But other than that, both of these guys have small planet level calcs, although the calcs for just the sucking force of Orochi's tail are more impressive than the calcs for Sage charging and spinning at full speed with the full weight of his body behind it, and one of Sage's small planet level calcs can also be debunked. And both of these guys scale far, far higher than everyone else on the list so far, as even base Orochi is stronger than Psychos by her own admission, and then we find out that Orochi was specifically suppressing himself and hiding his true power from her as well, so Psychos thinks a suppressed-based Orochi is stronger than her. Orochi is also stated to be the strongest monster, stronger than any of the cadres, and Rover submits to him as well. And then Sage obviously scales to this lore too, if you want to use him scaling over Orochi. Moving on, Platinum S's scaling depends largely on how strong you think Sage Centipede is. On the one hand, for reasons I established in my Golden S vs Bang video, I think Bang's attack potency should somewhat scale to Platinum S's durability. However, on the other hand, Garo takes 2 shots to kill Platinum S, and then immediately after that he is able to damage Sage Centipede with a flurry of blows. Sage is calced at small planet level and could potentially be above Orochi lore-wise, so Platinum S being able to take a hit from Garo should make him at least near small planetary. But then Garo is able to damage him much earlier in the fight when he still shouldn't be too much stronger than Bang is, so yeah, it's really weird. You could argue Platinum was just suppressed early on, but in the specific moment when Garo damaged him for the first time, Platinum S was facing off against King, who he believed to be extremely strong. It would make no sense for Platinum to nerf his durability against King. Plus, how does one even nerf his durability in One Punch Man? There are a couple examples of it happening throughout the series, but it's still weird to think about. So yeah, Bang might get upscaled to near small planetary. This is dumb. I mean... But I mean, it's something that does happen? I don't know, it's really weird. You could definitely make the argument as well that Sage should be much weaker than small planet level, cause there's really only one valid calc for him being that strong, and every other calc has him at like continental. Other than that, I think it makes the most sense for Platinum to be suppressed whenever he gets damaged by Goro early on in his fights. But then at the same time, it also makes no sense for him to be suppressed during the first instance he takes damage. It was a surprise attack though, so maybe that could explain part of it. Regardless, there's still a big difference between Sage and Platinum's durability. Goro cracks Platinum's entire body with one blow and completely shatters him with the next, whereas he takes a flurry of blows to damage the outer shell of Sage's face, which is his weakest point. So yeah. For Platinum S versus Orochi, again, it's a little interpretation based on just how much you think Sage is stronger than Orochi, or if he's even stronger at all. If Sage is a one-shot tier above Orochi, then Platinum S could maybe be above Orochi in durability and attack potency, but if not, then Platinum should be far below Orochi's durability and power, and he would not be able to damage him at all. And Platinum is also a lot faster than Orochi regardless. Next up, Genos is obviously a beast as he is able to briefly clash with Sairochi. We'll get into her later, but she's multiple tiers above Orochi. Genos being able to withstand this amount of energy coursing through his body is crazy as well. Debatably, before his body melts down, Genos' durability would be too great for anyone in the lower tiers to breach. He only ever takes damage later on when many of his components have been fried and the metal on his body has melted down. So overall, huge scale blast that could one-shot any Kadri with ease and enough durability to withstand this level of energy being channeled through his body. Yeah, Genos is definitely above everyone in C tier. Worst case scenario, he blows himself up and it's a stalemate. And last up in B tier is Evil Ocean Water. It is able to damage Goro, who could damage Sage Centipede, making it potentially small planet level, maybe continental. It's water, so it's hard to kill, and you need to have insane scale to put it down for good. Someone like Genos, for example, I believe has the attack potency to seriously damage water, but he just does not have the scale and stamina to destroy it for good before his tank runs dry. Orochi, however, does have the scale with his beams and Gaia Cannon, so he should be able to whittle water down. Genos could incinerate Orochi though, and Platinum S cannot damage Orochi, but he probably could blitz around Genos until he runs out of his 10-second mode and melts down a bit, lowering his durability and giving Platinum S the chance to kill him. And he might also just have the AP to damage Genos even without that, so yeah, he could beat him. Platinum could never beat Sage, but Genos just shooting a beam at Sage's face and blowing a part of his body would likely destroy his region core by accident. Plus, the cyborg is definitely smart enough to figure out that there is a regeneration core inside of Sage, so he should beat him pretty consistently. And now hopefully you can see why this tier is pretty complicated. Matchups matter a lot here, and the feats clash with the lore. If you think Sage and Ocean Water are both a one-shot tier above Orochi, then the ranking would go Orochi at number 13, Platinum S at number 12, Sage Centipede at 11, Genos at 10, and Evil Ocean Water at 9. If you think Sage and Ocean Water are more powerful than Orochi but not by a large amount, then Platinum S and Orochi would switch placements, and if you think Orochi is stronger than Sage, then the ranking would go Platinum S at number 13, number 12 Sage Centipede, number 11 Evil Ocean Water, number 10 Orochi, and number 9 Genos. Personally, I like that last variant the most, but I can see arguments for the first or second rankings as well. Now moving up to A tier, we have two characters, Sairochi at number 8 and Tatsumaki at number 7. Sairochi is crazy because, like I talked about before, Orochi gets his Gaia Cannon overpowered by Saitama and then gets one-shot by him. Then Orochi fuses with Psychos, and this fusion gets an amp from God. When Sairochi is first formed, she believes she can crush Saitama despite having memories of him running through Orochi like butter. This immediately confirms that this incomplete fusion is already a one-shot tier above Orochi. Then she spreads her roots and starts absorbing energy from the surrounding area, logically making her stronger. Then she is fully formed and manages to make Tatsumaki sweat and actually question where all of this power came from. Tats was confident she could fight the incomplete Sairochi from underground, but this complete Sairochi shocks her with her power. So this being, who was already a one-shot tier above Orochi, is now even stronger. You might say that Sage and Ocean Water should be above her based off of the fact that God sends them to kill Saitama, but in the most charitable interpretation of Sage's lore, God has seen Saitama one-shot Orochi and nothing else. He only knows Saitama as the being that one-shot Orochi. And Saitama shouldn't inherently be above Tatsumaki in God's eyes because he's never shown any better feats to God than one-shotting Orochi. The Boros battle doesn't count because if you say that God saw that, then the Sage lore just becomes invalid right off the bat, because then obviously he would know Saitama would obliterate Sage, so yeah. One-shotting Orochi is the best feat that God has seen from Saitama. I assume that to be the fist that has turned against God, one has to have removed their limiter. I don't really see any other reason. And we know that Garo started breaking his limiter all the way back in spiral form. The limiter might also be different for every individual, so it's not really scalable where the baseline for the fist that has turned against God would be scaling-wise. It's an arbitrary, unscalable term, and the best feat Saitama has shown is one-shotting Orochi, which doesn't even put him near Tatsumaki or full-power Sairochi. And by the time he sends Sage out to destroy the fist that has turned against God, Tatsumaki is knocked out and Sairochi is gone. Sage wouldn't have to contend with either of them in the fight when he arrived, so God wouldn't be taking them into account. All this to say, I personally think Sairochi massacres Sage, even if we go with the interpretation that he is a one-shot tier above Orochi. Other than that, Genos cannot even measure Sairochi's level of power. She can casually slice continents and shoot many lasers in many different directions at once. She can create psychic hurricanes, barriers, shoot electricity, morph her body, has telekinesis, and she has good regeneration. She could probably rip Sage's regen core out of his body or simply crush him. She could evaporate ocean water and disintegrate everyone else below her. Honestly, Sairochi might just solo everyone below her on the list at the same time. And then following up from that, Tatsumaki body slams Sairochi while weakened and injured. I already have an entire video on why I believe she solos the rest of the normal S-class with ease, and I even made a video talking about why I think she stands a good chance of beating various forms of monster Garo too. I'm basically the biggest Tatsumaki tard on the platform, I think. I have one more Tatsumaki video coming up as well, so yeah, I think I've talked about her enough already. From here, things get a lot simpler. In A+ tier at number 6 is Boros, the dominator of the universe. I have an entire video on Boros scaling, and I have a video on why I think he slaughtered Tatsumaki without even going meteoric burst. Some of the stuff I said in my original Boros video is a little outdated, but for the most part, I still stand by most of the things I said in those videos. I also have another Boros video putting him up against one of the strongest characters of another anime coming up, so stay tuned. But overall, I view Boros as being the top of the totem pole in One Punch Man before we get into God-boosted characters. This is pretty much the highest level living beings can achieve without God. Unless you're Saitama, of course. Now in S- tier, at number 5 is Blast. Blast is the gatekeeper of the God tiers. I have a whole video on why Blast is much stronger than Boros to the point that I can't really even place them in the same tier. He keeps up with Serious Saitama and is able to teleport and briefly contain the force of the Serious Punch squared. That's pretty much all you need to know. And lastly in God tier is Garo at number 4, King at number 3, Saitama at number 2, and God at number 1. These rankings are pretty self-explanatory, I don't think I need to elaborate. This video is already long enough, so let's just finish here. And yeah, that was the list. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it wasn't too bad or too controversial. Again, please keep in mind that this is just my personal list. You can disagree, you can agree, you know, we all have our takes. We all have our bad opinions, guys. But yeah, with nothing else to say, I wish you a good rest of the day. See you next time. Goodbye. Basically, what Elder Centipede has over most of his foes is his insane vitality. Was I about to... What?